Oscar's really been reeling still from losing the championship last year to Lando. And
Oscar Piastri was indeed reeling during the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. Do you know why? Because he had a case of Murphy's Law. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Despite all that, he found himself in contention for the win. A lot of things that happened reminded us of the 2025 season, but not for the reason Damon Hill said in the post-qualifying show. Let's dive into Oscar's weekend and see what reason he had to be reeling and how, despite a new rule set, nothing has changed. I'm Wimbo. Here's 3 seconds to leave a like. Piastri's weekend started with his team McLaren finally having a big upgrade package. Well, I say McLaren, but it was actually Lando Norris who got the upgraded package. Oscar got nothing. In fact, he got the first hour of practice off because his seat was given to Leonardo Fornaroli to comply with the rookie running requirements. The upgrades weren't on that car yet when the Italian Formula 3 champion drove it in FP1. In FP2, Piastri did have his car, but in windy conditions on a very dirty slippery track, he finished P8. Saturday is always a very important day in Hungary. You need to qualify in a good position as the short medium speed track is famously known for being a track where overtaking is difficult. FP3 is the time to adjust everything to go into qualifying with confidence. Oscar Piastri did have the upgrades this time. This didn't give him much time to prepare himself or get used to the changes. Despite all that, he ended that session in P5, half a second behind teammate Lando Norris. Obviously Lando had 3 sessions with the upgrades, so that was an advantage. This advantage was visible during the qualifying. Piastri was really fast and was in contention for the front row, fighting the Ferraris of Hamilton and Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton, who is a monster on the Hungaroring, set the provisional pole time in the first run of the fast laps in Q3. If nobody had beaten that time, it would have been his 10th pole position there. But then there was Lando Norris, who beat that time by 1/100th of a second. The margins are always really narrow in Hungary, but this was really crazy. Hamilton was probably too busy watching his steering wheel after the second run because he impeded Oscar Piastri massively. Even the British commentators called it a slam dunk penalty for Hamilton. It takes a lot for them to say that about their favourite deity. Piastri ended up in P5 before the penalties were handed out. Damon Hill had something to say about this penalty, but I'll address that in a minute. Max Verstappen had his Macarena wing again, the one that made him spin twice. He wasn't very happy during qualifying because the car was degrading, he said. Not his tyres, his car was getting less and less downforce. So he spun in the middle of the last turn, which hampered Antonelli. The young Italian lifted a tiny bit to make sure what happened in Austria didn't happen again. He broke off his lap there for a single yellow, and the FIA judged he didn't lift off enough, so he got a penalty as well. So Hamilton 3 places back from P2 and Antonelli 3 places back from P3. This moved Verstappen and Piastri forward to P3 and P4. Not too bad for a quali session that was messed up by Lewis Hamilton. In the post-qualifying show, I was happy to see Juan Pablo Montoya wasn't there. He was replaced by the 1996 world champion Damon Hill. I was ready to give him a chance. It couldn't be worse than Montoya, right?
Wrong.
The first thing that Hill said was that Max Verstappen was in a negative spiral because he complained about the regulations and the car too much. And that's why he spun. Right, okay. Since this video is about Oscar Piastri, I'll let that one go and tell you what he said about Piastri. We know Hill is Team LH all the way, and that's okay. Still, it would be nice if Hamilton made a huge error, they would treat it as such, instead of blowing some smokescreen about something else he's been dying to get out of his system. Hill said, Oscar's still been reeling from losing the championship last year to Lando, and Lando has been growing in confidence. Now, how is that in any way related to Lewis Hamilton impeding Oscar Piastri? He could have said that Hamilton should have enough experience not to dilly-dally on the racing line. He could have said that Ferrari wasn't very sharp. But no! Hill was aching to get it out into the world that Oscar Piastri from Australia was beaten by Lando Norris from England. I checked my social media and many people had seen it and were complaining about it. I really wish we had Vettel and Button at F1 TV. Those guys are nothing but positive about other drivers and don't seem to have any agendas. Who would you like to see? So that was qualifying for Piastri. Not a bad starting position for the race, all things considered. But then, during the race, something happened that had Oscar reeling again. The race started in the best way possible for Oscar. Very reminiscent of the 2025 season, actually. The 2025 World Champion is known for one specific trait, which is losing positions at the start. This time it wasn't the Ferraris of Charles Leclerc who had a great start. The days of Ferrari's great starts are gone. It was Oscar Piastri who challenged his teammate and came out ahead. In the lead, Piastri set the pace in clean air, and even though he couldn't get rid of Lando, he stayed ahead. Then, after the first rounds of pit stops, Norris started pushing Piastri even more on hard tyres. And then the papaya game started, just like last year and the year before. This time it was Norris complaining that he had way more pace than his teammate and, without saying it, he wanted to be let through. Luckily for Piastri, the threat of Ferrari being a danger to the win was neutralised by Max Verstappen, who, in an undrivable car, according to the Dutchman himself, was a buffer between the red cars and the papaya cars. So the McLaren pit wall left it like that for a while, with Norris getting more and more frustrated in the dirty air of Piastri. But Piastri had earned that place by getting a better start. Norris needs to make more decisive moves attacking and defending. That way he doesn't have to rely on his team to bail him out, which they eventually did. They pitted Piastri again, pretty early, with a lot of traffic ahead, not knowing what would happen later. See, we have 22 cars on track now, since we have Cadillac on the grid as the 11th team. Okay, they were already out by that point, but on a short track, back markers are always an issue, especially when they're fighting. Sainz and Alonso were scrapping along, ignoring blue flags left, right and centre. Now, I do believe something was going on with the blue flags because they were there constantly. Oscar didn't want to lose too much time behind them, so he pushed forward, and then Sainz, who's already grumpy as hell at Williams, made contact and stayed in the way of Piastri for another while. This actually got Piastri reeling. Never seen him this angry, to be honest. But then Norris pitted and he had overcut his teammate. This was to be expected with Norris being faster, but Oscar's engineer came over the radio to explain that the overcut happened thanks to Carlos, not the team. Piastri snapped back that it was great they considered that. So Piastri was fuming at his team as well. To make matters worse, Piastri had a gearbox issue and DNF'd out of the race. Murphy's Law. Everything went wrong in the end. Just like some of the races at the end of 2025. Another thing we saw last season was Norris going off track for no reason. Piastri was still pissed off after the race, and when they told him the excuse Sainz gave for his mistake, he said that it was the dumbest thing he ever heard. He also said, "I don't really care if he didn't see me. The fact that he didn't and no one told him, or there was a lack of complete awareness, is unacceptable. We don't see Oscar like that very often. It was cool to see him actually say something." Verstappen, who finished second, looked at Norris going off the track for no reason in the cooldown room after the race. That hasn't changed either. They had a bit of a laugh about it. And Will Joseph coaching Norris through every lap was a big thing again as well. Don't ride the curves, Lando. No more wheel spins, Lando. I know, all drivers get coached. But it always sounds a little childish for Norris. I can't help it. Norris was blistering fast and he deserved the win. It was a championship-worthy performance from the Briton. Piastri will go into the summer break to lick his wounds. And hopefully he'll come back stronger. We need as many different winners as possible after the summer break. Hopefully Verstappen in Zandvoort. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe. Take care now. Doei doei.